Hello everyone! I hope you guys have been doing well. I had an awesome long weekend because of the 4th of July, and since it's quarantine, that basically gave me an excuse to eat a full pie by myself. So I was just chilling and consuming my body weight in sugar and thinking about pies when I suddenly realized that there's actually a lot of different kinds of savory pies. There's mincemeat pies, chicken pot pies, probably other pies, but there's not really a savory cake. I mean, there is cornbread, but that has the word bread in it, so I'm not super convinced that it counts. I did find this savory pound cake recipe from the New Yorker, which looks really promising. So in this video, I'm going to recreate that recipe and let you know my thoughts. So enjoy! Before I made this savory cake, I wanted to remind myself it was in a regular cake, apart from, rainbows and happiness. So I found a pretty good looking recipe for a vanilla pound cake, which contained butter, sugar, and eggs, and flour, salt, and baking powder for the dry ingredients, and vanilla extract for flavoring. And the pound cake is named after how you'll gain a pound for every bite you eat. So I decided to scale down the recipe a lot for my video. For our cake, we're going to start rather unconventionally by substituting half the butter with olive oil, and I think olive oil and bread are a match made in heaven, right up there with Oreos and milk, Lily and using someone else's Netflix account. So olive oil and cake sounds like it could be good, because what is cake if not fluffy bread? Obviously, we can't go adding a whole bunch of sugar to a savory cake, so instead we're gonna substitute with an equal amount of salt. I'm just kidding, that would be terrible. We're gonna use Parmesan cheese, which is also kind of a crazy ingredient, and then I topped it off with some butter and mixed everything together. I forgot to let the butter come up to room temperature first, and then it got into a fight with my mixer, but after good whipping, it was finally beaten into submission, and then it really fluffed up. The whole thing was almost pale white in color. I then added the eggs and mixed it until it was just incorporated. Now moving on to the dry ingredients. This is pretty similar to the original list, and here I'm just adding some flour, baking powder, and salt. And the one special thing here is black pepper to kind of really tie in the olive oil theme. I added everything to my wet ingredients and mixed until it was just combined, and that's it for the cake. But Lily, wait, you might ask. What about the flavor? Why would I want to just eat a hunk of flour with olive oil? Okay, honestly, bread and olive oil is delicious, but don't worry. So the extra flavor in this cake is actually coming from tomatoes. The recipe said you could use any tomato you want, but here I'm using grape tomatoes, which are actually red grapes. Confusing, I know. There's a lot of water content in tomatoes, which I think is bad for the cake. Maybe it's from California, so it's scared of the rain or something, but I removed all of the seeds, so only the drier parts were left. I also let it sit in some salt until it was as dry SpongeBob. This always horrified me as a kid, but this is about how dry my tomatoes were. And after everything was ready, it was time to assemble the pound cake. Here I'm using a round cake pan, and wait, aren't you supposed to use a loaf pan for pound cake? To which I say, that's dumb. It's called a bread loaf pan, but we are not trying to make pound bread over here, so into a cake pan this goes. Also, in reality, this is my only pan, so I poured half my batter in, added a layer of tomatoes, and poured the remaining batter in, and then put the tomatoes on top. And then I baked it in the oven. So, I know you've heard of pizza pie. Well, get ready for pizza cake. I cut myself a slice, and it certainly looks very interesting. So, here we are. This is our savory cheesy cake. Not cheesecake, cheese cake. And I'm a little bit nervous to try it, but here we go. Okay. Well, it definitely feels very pound cakey when you cut into it. I'm really scared. Alright. Whoa. This definitely has the texture of pound cake, but it's just so is delicious. Clearly it's not a dessert, but the flavors work so well together. Okay, so the one thing that I can think of that this tastes a lot like is, I don't know if you guys have ever made tomatoes and eggs, but it's like a very classic Chinese dish that a lot of people learn when they're like 5 years old or something. This just reminds me a lot of eating tomato and eggs over rice. I think it's just because there's tomatoes and eggs in the cake, and then the flour kind of acts as a substitute for the rice. It's undeniably a savory cake. Please let me know what you guys would think would be good in a savory cake. I think this is a very interesting genre of food, and it's been a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye!